All right, time is now 6 p.m. and I'll call to order the McMinnville Fire District Board of Directors meeting on September 21st. First order of business is roll call.
Director Sparrow? Here. Treasurer Trapp? Here. Secretary Pratt? Here. Vice President Smith? Here. President Garber?
Here.
All present, sir.
All right.
All present.
From there, we have the Pledge of Allegiance and call on Treasurer Trapp to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, that brings us to changes to the agenda. Is there any modifications anybody needs to make or pull anything off the agenda? None. That moves us to the consent agenda, which we don't have anything for this meeting. Well, it's financial report. We don't have anything, so that moves us to public comment. I didn't receive any public comment cards yet. Is there anybody on Zoom that? If anybody's on Zoom and would like to participate in public comment, if you could raise your hand and Chief Hanovan can unmute you. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public comment, which brings us to our action required, which is our fire chief hiring process update, and I'll call on Director Hedges to brief us on that.
Okay, just to be sure.
This is not the resolution. This is just the
update.
update.
Okay, thanks. So the job posting has closed. I mentioned last time we had around a dozen. We finished 14 applicants. 9 of them met the minimum qualifications. So those applicants were forwarded to task force to review and score. So that's where we're at in the process right now.
Nice.
We finalized our panels and we will be touching base with participants on the panels probably next week.
Awesome. Any questions from the board for Director Hedges on the process? That's where we're at. All right. Thank you for that. That'll take us to item B, which is consider the first reading of ordinance 23-1 and ordinance prohibiting career and volunteers and other district employees and volunteers from serving as a district director. You'll recall that we already did do this one time, but there was a formality with getting it published in the News Register that didn't take place, and so that's why it's back before us tonight. Anything you'd like to add, Chief?
That covers it. And I apologize for the redundant double work, but we want to make sure we're transparent. Everything is good to go. There are no changes to either of these ordinances after they were approved last time. So what you see is the versions that were approved and modified for the last round.
So with that, does anybody have any, all open up for discussion? Ordinance 23-1, anybody have any comments or concerns? All right, hearing none, I'll call for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 23-1.
All right,
Motion to approve 23-1 in its first reading. An ordinance prohibiting career and volunteer firefighters and other district employees and volunteers from serving as district director. The second reading is scheduled for a regular board meeting September 28th, 2023. Make a motion, please.
I just figured that.
so motion by Vice President Smith and a second by Secretary Pratt. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes unanimously 5-0. That takes us to item C. Consider the first reading of ordinance number 23-2, an ordinance to allow the fire district to adopt fees and rates for district provided services and allowing future board amendments of rates by resolution. Same reason we adopted these folks, same meeting, the publishing formality in the paper, so that's why it's back before us. You will see that this ordinance doesn't have anything related to the care homes, because we amended that out of the first ordinance, so this is a total clean ordinance as we adopted it in that first unofficial adoption.
Practice.
Yeah. So, anything additional, Chief?
No, sir.
And then I'll open up for discussion if anybody has comments, questions, concerns, typos. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion, and you'd want to just read the verbiage that's on the back there to make sure we dot all our i's and cross all our t's on round 2.
And make a motion to ordinance 23-2 in its first reading, an ordinance to allow the McMinnville Fire District to adopt fees and rates for district provided services and allowing for future board amendments of rates by resolution. Second reading is scheduled for regular board meeting on September 28th, 2023.
All right, so we have a motion by Director Sparrow, a second.
I second that.
A second by Treasurer Trapp. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously 5-0. Which brings us to item B, which is review and adopt board policies 15 and then 2023. 15, anything on that, Chief?
Yes, sir. As 15 was the one that was and there needs to be an amendment to the packet for 15. In the number 15. 15 was the standing committees of the board, and the board asked me to go out and look for some information on other committees or the way to do other committees. And when I went to special districts, they revised my thought process and brought me back to the method to create additional committees if we want to, but not having standing committees running all the time because of the workload required to have outside staff and volunteers and everything else to have on those committees. So the one committee that we had 4 standing committees. A budget committee and audit committee are required by statutory requirement. The personnel committee, they suggested we remove. It is a supplemental committee that some districts use and some don't. We will be, as in the next couple of months, be bringing forward civil service process and commission. A large part of what the personnel committee does in some places is really managed or handled through the civil service commission once we get that up and running. And we also will have personnel policies in place as we come forward that will take care of a lot of the things that the personnel committees and some of the other districts. So I would recommend deleting number 3, the personnel committee. The rest of this process, the rest of this policy takes into and recommend from special districts the methods to create committees should you want one. Whether it's a standing committee or an ad hoc committee, how to appoint individuals or members of the committee, how to remove individuals or members of the committee, periods of time served. So it really kind of lays out a really good process for getting the people on the committees and that are important to have the right people in the right places. And then we left the audit committee, budget committee, and the strategic planning committee as a part of standing committees, just because of the two statutory requirements and the nature of our starting up and probably long work that the strategic planning committee will have to do.
Thank you for that, Chief. Open up for discussion. Any questions around board policy 15? I know we've tabled this a couple times, so if people still want more thoughts to be put into it, we can always table it again. Good. Anything?
Good here.
Director Sparrow or Trapp, any concerns or?
Is there currently, or I should say prior Has there been a strategic planning committee?
No.
No.
When we were processing a strategic plan, there was a committee. When we weren't, there wasn't.
Okay.
All right, hearing none, I'll call for a motion on board policy 15.
I move we approve board policy 15 with the deletion of the personnel committee.
All right, I'll have a amended motion by Secretary Pratt. Anybody would like to second that?
I'll second that.
A second by Vice President Smith. All those in favor of board policy 15 as amended, signify by saying aye.
Okay.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously 5-0. That brings us to board policy 20, which is our ethics policy. Chief, a briefing on that.
Statutory requires, statute requires that the board have an ethics policy. And what you see in front of you is the statutory requirements for the ethics policy. One of the requirements for new board members is ethics training, and SDO will start expanding ethics training. Some of the statutory stuff that's occurring at the state level, there's some requirements coming out that are going to be mandated on districts for more formal ethics training. But in the meantime, we have annual ethics training. We have a policy on it that is SDO approved and meets all the requirements until that statutory language changes for us to have formal training.
All right. This policy is pretty straightforward. It's similar to what you'll be briefed on in any SDAO training as well. So I don't see anything that concerns me, but would anybody like to make any modifications to it?
I would ask or just point out that in the recent session in Salem, there was quite a few laws that were passed that strengthened this area. I don't know how updated this is, but took into account recent laws that were passed.
This was the set of statutory requirements before those laws were passed. So this hasn't been updated to reflect once those come out through SDAL, we'll update this policy as we get to that point. Okay, thank you.
And those will probably go live January 1 anyways.
I think that's the Ty, are you here? Was that January 1?
It's our understanding that January, they're working with the OIR to get the language clarified, but it should be January. Because the rules right now. Yeah.
Okay. Those give us a baseline, but probably back and forth for too long to update. Any more discussion on board policy 20? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt board policy 20 as presented, or whatever amendment you might want to make.
I'll make a motion that we approve board policy 20 ethics.
All right, we have a motion to approve board policy 20 as presented by Vice President Smith. A second.
Second.
Second by Secretary Pratt. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously 5-0. That takes us to board policy 21, which is fire med membership.
Currently, practice on the city has been to allow or offer active volunteers and active life members a free fire med membership. This is not an SDAO policy. This would be a McMinnville specific policy on what we do and how we do that. And it does include permanent household members of those either active volunteers or lifetime members.
And do they need to fill out some additional forms?
If I'm not mistaken, they still have to fill out the application the membership application every year. We just don't charge them, and that way they're put into the system for billing purposes.
Gotcha.
I have to look at my fire folks over there, verify that.
And I know we have a collaboration with Lifeline, but this doesn't cover Lifeline.
This does not cover Lifeline. This is just for our specific billing purposes.
Okay.
Or life, any of the fireman membership.
Yep. All right, any questions around board policy 21? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt board policy 21 to provide fireman membership to all directors, active volunteers, and lifetime members.
I'll make the motion to approve board policy 21 as presented.
A motion by Treasurer Traft and a second.
Second.
Second by Director Sparrow. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Board policy 21 passes 5-0. That takes us to board policy 22, board of directors, district uniform benefit.
This policy is a policy on uniform wear and attire. And much like I have on here, except without the city logo, but with the new district logo, once we get one, those types of garments would be made available if you chose to do that for the district board folks. It's a benefit, so we have to address the potential benefit.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Open up for discussion and thoughts. All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for board policy 22 as presented.
Make a motion that we adopt the board policy 22 as written.
All right, a motion by Director Sparrow and a second. Second by Secretary Pratt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Motion passes 5-0. That takes us to our final board policy of the evening, which is board policy 22 or 23, board expenses and compensation.
So this policy is directly out of ORS. There is an allocation for up to $50 per meeting, but the practice has been for volunteer board members in some of the areas. That is how the policy was crafted, and that was how our budget was budgeted. If at some point in time the board wanted to say they wanted to receive up to $50 per meeting, they could do that also. I'm not trying to, I want to be transparent upon the options. That's either, there is up to $50 payment for board members or unpaid volunteers. I crafted the policy as an unpaid volunteer. And then also obviously for reimbursement of expenses and travel and training expenses and how that would, the process that would work for the board members when they're traveling on behalf of the organization.
All right, any discussion around board policy 23 or questions for the chief?
Chief, did you find this to be pretty customary?
This is an SDO policy, not the SDO book.
Any other questions or discussion? I just add that I think it's important that we maintain an unpaid volunteer board and that way that policy is there for long after we're gone, make sure people are here for the right reasons. So with that, if there's no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion for board policy 23.
I move that we approve board policy 23.
All right, we have a motion by Secretary Pratt for board policy 23 as presented. And a second.
Second.
A second by Director Sparrow. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Board policy 23 passes 5-0. That brings us to our resolution this evening, which is resolution 23-09, a resolution of the district approving the fire chief recruitment, hiring, and selection and screening process. I'll turn it over to fire chief for.
As you all know, we've been working on these processes and we have board policies that have been passed already with regards to the board fire chief relationship, the fire chief's responsibilities, the fire chief's job description, the salary. This is recapping all of the work that has been done so far and putting it in place and order, and also identifying the processes and procedures that have been authorized in a previous meeting by the board for this process, because these steps have been taken and these processes had to be put in place prior to being able to do an executive session for the hiring of the new chief. All the work has been done, all the processes were approved before. This is memorializing it in a single place with a single resolution and all the work that's been done to meet the SDL requirements for the process and to meet the statutory requirements to have the executive session for the interviews for the moving the candidates. The one component that has not occurred, that will occur, is public input. Well, the public has had input on this process because they've been in public meetings, and they've had the availability to come in and give input, but they also will have the opportunity to meet the candidates in the meet and greet. So we'll make sure that when we get to that point, that's advertised as a public opportunity to have input on the candidates. And that should take care of the statutory requirements for the process for the hiring.
So in short, this is a housekeeping item. That allows us to have an executive session October 12th and October 13th.
So the fire chief interpreter.
Any discussion around resolution 23-09? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 23-09 as presented.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2309 as written.
All right, so we have a motion on the table by Vice President Smith and a second. Second by Treasurer Trapp. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify by saying nay. Resolution 23-09 passes 5-0. That brings us to our other business evening. Is there any additional or new information regarding LoSAP?
Nothing new.
Is that new? Okay. And then Director Sparrow, I think you said you guys are gonna meet on the 25th, so nothing new on branding?
Correct.
Okay. And that brings us to item B, which is board information reports. Anything from the board outside of LoSAP and branding?
Just like a brief report on, I did receive a call from Scott Unger from the press regarding the branding conversation. And he was just trying to get an understanding of what that was and what that meant. So I kind of explained it to him. And he said, oh, those are going to be public meetings. And I said, well, we're not going to have a public forum for those meetings, but people are invited to come and listen. So.
Yeah, and there won't be a forum present.
And we won't host them as a public meeting, but I wanted to just go on the line and say that they're not going to be posted as a public meeting because we're not going to have a quorum at those meetings.
Yeah, so that's important. If anybody is going to attend those meetings, to just let myself or the chief know so we can make sure we only have one other director there besides, you know, Dan or Josh, if you're going to be there. So if Ray, myself, or Vice President Smith are going to be there, we want to make sure one of you isn't there so we don't have a quorum, or we need to notice that meeting if there's going to be 3 directors present.
Okay.
Anything else on board information reports? That brings us to item C, which is brief the board on the Lafayette agreement.
So this is just an opening statement from the outgoing chief to kind of give the board a heads up on where we are. I don't have any data or statistical information. I can provide that for you at your time. Or make it available. But prior to COVID, before the new fire station was built in Lafayette, and before the consolidation efforts were going full bore, we were looking at placing an ambulance in the substation in Lafayette, a staff ambulance in Lafayette. The concept, and this is a concept, I'm going to share it with you just so you all understand what the concept was not like the Amity concept where we cross-staffed engines and ambulances and we're administering the organization. It was a living quarters and parking place for the ambulance, so they can deploy into the north end of our area. We have maps and we have statistical data analysis from our crews lived, you might have been here, Dan, at the time. Our crews lived in the house near the Lafayette Fire Station to demonstrate the response time improvements we could do to the ASA and to the area. Move forward 5 years. The construction hasn't started. They got the construction started. We went into COVID. We went through a consolidation process. At the time, the mayor of Lafayette was not interested in consolidating or moving forward, and that was over and done with as far as that went. We still were trying to find methods to improve our ambulance service area response, because Lafayette's responses significantly improved the Crookshank, Highway 18, the care homes along Highway 18, the airport area, as well as over into Dayton and down to the Dayton and McMinnville district on that side of town. There are significant improvements to our responses in that area. Before the vote, we were engaged in a contract for leasing or renting space from the Lafayette city to have an ambulance out there for 24/7. At the time the vote passed, it was decided we just put that on hold until we get to the district. And it wasn't something that we had the bandwidth or the capacity to deal with while we're getting the district started up. So I just wanted, because I'm outgoing, I'm trying to impart some background knowledge on where we were, how we got there. There is interest on the Lafayette's part to have us there. It's a win for them. There was a cost associated that at the time they were asking for $500 a month. You don't have a contract with them. You don't have an agreement with them. That would be up to the board and the new chief to work out some sort of agreement. But there are significant improvements to the response times to the north end of McMinnville, as well as to the McMinnville ASA, and as well as the highway accidents that we have out of Crookshank and Highway 18. So I wanted to just kind of brief the board. Next meeting is going to be right in the middle of air show, and I didn't know if I'd have the extra 5 minutes time to kind of get through the stuff that I wanted to get through. And this is one of those components that's been in my head for a lot of years. I wanted to get it out into the open and make sure the board is aware of some of the opportunities that are out there. There's other partners out there that may have interest in doing something similar. But so I don't want to isolate specifically and focus specifically on Lafayette. I think Lafayette's a brand new fire station and it's ready to go. And I think there's value in nurturing that partnership for future, because I think if we could work to have a more formal partnership with them in the future, it would eliminate us having to construct a fire station. If we could find some sort of method to work out some sort of agreement once we started staffing fire stations. Again, that's pie in the sky, fire chief's hopes, dreams of what we could do to improve on North End without having to build a fire station and take advantage of a partnership instead of having to have the construction costs and whatever that looks like at the end of the day. It'll be up to the board and then the chief to make those decisions, but I haven't had that opportunity to share that with the board, and I wanted to share it with them before I'm not able to do that as the chief that worked through some of those processes and some of those backgrounds and help to kind of come up with some of those concepts. Thank you.
And has the revised ASA been finalized yet?
It has not. The revised ASA is still, apparently there's some mapping issues, and they're working through some mapping issues on the north end of the county. But we're not involved in it. It's the county and Tualatin Valley working through some Gaston area mapping issues. Until that gets cleared up, it's going to be standby and on hold.
Is there any inclination like that draft is going to require us to do something more than just willingly do something, but actually have a requirement for standards to cover up in that north end that we can't meet currently?
No, as far as the mapping area, the map, no. As a matter of fact, we'll be in a good position. The mapping area covers probably about a linear mile of a jog or not a jog. It really isn't, and it all is around access off of a certain roadway. And that's really, it probably was done because of where you're coming from, it's faster from one way or the other, and, but no one really has any history of why it was done the way it was up there, so they're gonna try and get that cleaned up. But it will not impact our ability to provide service, and half the time we are dispatched to that zone, and half the time Twelve Valley's dispatched to that zone, so. So it's not gonna, and it's up in, what's the road off of, I can't. Yeah, it's pretty far up into the rural area. It will not, we're gonna be just as fast as Twelve Valley, and Twelve Valley will be just as fast as us. Both of us will be able to meet the new standard to get there, so it's not gonna impact us as far as the dinging us in the ASA reporting process in the long run.
Sounds good. Any questions for Chief on the Lafayette agreement?
It's my understanding that we're at capacity and bed space here.
Correct.
And that would improve, that would create some opportunity.
Well, that would free up at least two beds, 24 hours a day. So if we wanted to start coming up with some other staffing options, or brought in more paid staff for the engine, it would put us in a better position to be able to do that. Now, we have vacancies, and so, but when we're fully staffed, we're fully bumped.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief? All right, thank you for that update and information download before you depart. Over a week.
I get it out of my mouth so I don't forget.
That brings us to department reports, and first up on that would be 099.
So we were contacted recently, us and the volunteers were both contacted recently about maybe possibly bringing back the firefighters dance. We're working together. Pete's not here today, but we're working together with the volunteers to see what that looks like and if that's something that we have bandwidth to bring back and be a part of or not. That's the big thing that is on our plate at this moment. The other thing I'd like to put out though as well, speaking of the Lafayette deal that Chief talked about today, is we talk about good partnerships, and we want to have good partnerships around the county, and we want to be involved in helping our partners around the county. But we've not been able to have the opportunity to have a sit-down formal conversation about moving an ambulance to Lafayette. And I would also caution any decisions that would move firefighters out of McMinnville. My last shift, we had a fire in which we got 2 ambulances and a 2-person engine on scene. So just something to keep in mind as we make these conversations and talk forward. Not opposed to anything, not coming out and saying that we're opposed to anything, but it is advantageous to look at moving and doing things differently, but moving firefighters out of McMinnville could be a problem. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bring this volunteer firefighter association. I don't see the person. Is he on Zoom? Nothing on Zoom. So that brings us to fire chief's report or chief's.
I'm giving you pretty much everything I've got currently at this point in time. We'll be gearing up obviously for air show next week, and starting Wednesday, I think we start having meetings, and Thursday we'll be on site for setup and that type of stuff. Weather's looking iffy, so they're gonna go regardless. It doesn't make a difference to them. They're going. They just sent us the numbers. They're like 14,000.
Still have 7,000 GA.
7,000 GA, yeah. And most of their GA goes in the last week. People wait till the weather before they buy and see what it's gonna look like. So, but it is their biggest sale in quite some time. It's their largest, even the Hillsborough shows. So they're pretty pleased with where they're at. And then just briefing you on the flip side of that, had a meeting with the city manager regarding the air show, and fire has pretty much taken the lead on the contracting and management of the air show permitting and processes. While it's an airport permit for them to use the airport, fire and police are the 2 key components. We either will have to get into a contract with the city, with the air show, or get into a contract with the air show independently. It's in our best interest to be heavily engaged on this type of thing up front, but we're the primary role player. So, and Jeff was not opposed to moving forward with some sort of joint contract with the air show, so that we can act on behalf of the city when dealing with permitting parts.
And it's not really a profit center, it's just a cost recovery.
It's, we cost recovery our paid staff, but they also pay the conflict rates for the vehicles while they're sitting on, so there is some, money that comes back into fleet. And there is, I think that's about it. The rest of it is, and the volunteers get paid for their time out there at a conflict rate. So the majority of it's cost recovery, but we are charging them whatever the going rate is for a vehicle to sit on the flight line for the duration of the 8-10 hours.
Sounds good. Anything from other chiefs in the room? No? Takes us to correspondence. Anybody's mailbox light up this week? No? Informational items? All right. Hearing none, that'll bring us to our next meeting, which is Thursday of next week, September 28th at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. With that, I will adjourn to this meeting at 6:36 p.m.